Well, as I was saying a second ago,
like on the field.
yeah, as I was saying a second ago, I think that it's so important for this Michigan team that they are coming back with so much senior talent, so many important football players. The fact that Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards and Zach Zinter are all coming back on the offensive side of the football. And they didn't really lose much on the defensive side, except for DJ Turner and Mozzie Smith. There are a lot of really, really good football players on this football team. I think that compared to any other Big Ten roster, they have the best team and the most experienced team in the Big Ten. As you're trying to talk about here, does this hurt their chances? I don't think it does. I think that this team, no matter what, is going to go 12-0 in the regular season. They have every reason to get there. And my biggest reason why I'm optimistic, Blake, is that J.J. McCarthy showed lots of signs of improvement, didn't look great against TCU, but if all goes according to plan this offseason, is good enough to take him over that next step.
You didn't think he looked good against TCU? Or good enough?
He threw 2 pick sixes.
Yeah, I understand that, but he also didn't give up 40 points.
Well, he technically gave up 14 points.
They still scored 51. I agree that he's got to get a little bit better. He still threw for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. He probably should have thrown for 3. Remember when they threw that ball against TCU and it got downed at the 1-yard line, then they fumbled.
Yeah.
I do agree. I think another year with J.J. McCarthy is going to be big for them. I like their offensive line. I think you could make the argument that they might. They're in the class with Georgia, Notre Dame, Michigan, and LSU. Those are the 4 best offensive lines in the country. Maybe you throw in Alabama there at number 5. But Michigan definitely has one of the best offensive lines in the country. Offensively, I think that they'll be really potent. I think it comes down to, Joe, what can they do in the back end, secondary-wise? If you got a lot of people returning, that's not always a good thing when you're getting your rear ends torn up. One thing that is for certain, they have recruited a lot better, and they're going to continue to recruit a lot better. It's kind of crazy about, we talk about them recruiting, and you got the Harbaugh's now called the Hamburglar, right? I do think that they are the most, I don't want to say they're the most talented. I think they're the best built roster, if that makes sense. Because it's difficult for me to say that they are more talented than Ohio State. I just think that we know what they have at quarterback at Michigan with J.J. McCarthy, and you don't really know what's going to happen with Ohio State. I still think Ohio State's got a lot of talent. It would not surprise me with everything, Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum included, that I've told you this before, and I'm going to stay by it. I think that you can either one of the 3 teams, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, could win it. I think they can win their division. I think that what that would be that's the West, right? The Big Ten West. Yeah, the Big Ten West.
No, the East.
I mean the East.
They're the East.
The Big Ten East might be, in my opinion, arguably the toughest division in college football this upcoming year because of how good those 3 teams are. I'm not ready to put Michigan in there, man. I'm not. I know that Ohio State's got to go back to Michigan in November, but at some point, Ohio State's going to come back fighting. And I just think that they're too well coached and too talented. I also think Penn State has got it right at quarterback. And I think that I like him more than I like a lot of people. And you know how much I feel about Penn State. The only thing, though, that why I think I give them an edge, if you put a gun to my head and said, Blake, pick Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, they're going to dominate on the line of scrimmage, and they're not going to get slowed down. With that being said, yeah, they're probably the best roster, but, man, I just don't want to pencil it in with them being the number 1 team in the Big Ten right now.
But here's the big thing for me. Their season is going to come down to 2 games. It's going to come down to how they play against Penn State. It's going to come down to how they play against Ohio State. Do they win both of those matchups like they did last year? Do they go on to win the Big Ten title because they get victories over both those teams? Look, plain and simple, Ohio State in this matchup, they're losing 3 starting offensive linemen that went to the NFL. And Paris Johnson, Luke Whippler, and DeJuan Jones. The two guys that return were the worst of the group. I don't think either of those guys they're fine. They're nothing special. Their defensive line is talented, but Tyreek Williams, Michael Hall Jr., not super experienced. They have a lot of upside. I just don't know how I can sit here and buy into Ohio State to beat Michigan when, one, they were pushed around on the line of scrimmage last year by them, heavily pushed around on the line of scrimmage by them. And then two, Kyle McCord is a question mark. I don't know what he is.
Well, so was J.J. McCarthy a year ago.
But he played in spurts, though, his freshman year with Cade McNamara there.
And looked pretty bad. There's a reason that McNamara – well, Joe, they came out the
he
first –
He was a true freshman, though. Kyle McCord's been there for a couple seasons.
Joe, they rotated quarterbacks in and out. What we were talking about Michigan a year ago, me and you, in the preseason was, do they have a quarterback? You knew that they had other positions. But the problem is – go ahead.
I actually think, though, that was more of a telling sign for Cade McNamara being a bad quarterback than it was JJ being bad. JJ was a true freshman.
Then why didn't you start him out off the top?
Because he was a true freshman.
I'm talking about off the top last year.
Oh, I benefit of the doubt to Cade McNamara. I think that's probably the case.
I agree that I think that they're the best overall roster. I just don't think that they're the most talented. I will be a little honest with you. I don't know if at all times they're the best coached. Okay, like I still think Ryan Day is a damn good coach. And I do think him taking a step back from play calling might benefit them. Fresh set of eyes. I'm telling you, man.
See, I don't really agree with that, though. I feel like
it's not as big of a separation as you make it seem it is. It's not.
I'm not saying it's a vast separation, but I feel like Ryan Day has rode off of the coattails of Urban Meyer since Urban Meyer stepped down. And like, what has Ryan Day done since then? He hasn't won a national championship. He's got his butt kicked by Jim Harbaugh.
He's gotten to a national championship.
He hasn't won one.
We also said the same exact thing about Kirby. Kirby got to one in year 2. He lost and then regained and then came back.
Yeah, but what year is this now for Ryan Day?
4, right?
He's regressed. He used
Joe, they got into the playoff last year and almost knocked off Georgia. Is that regressing?
I wouldn't say that that's regressing, but not beating Michigan.
Well, then where did they regress?
Look, they caught Georgia off guard. They weren't gonna beat Georgia.
Exposed by LSU in the SEC championship game, which you know that it's true, and they have a really good team.
That team that put up a fight with Georgia lost a lot of important football players again along their offensive line. I don't think that I don't think that Ohio State's beating Michigan, and that's what's going to keep them out of it.
Does this have anything to do with you saying that Notre Dame was also going to beat Ohio State?
Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. These are unrelated conversations.
I don't believe you.
I think Ohio State's overrated. I really believe that they're overrated. We have constantly given them way too much credit because they're a legacy name. They're a big name. But I would argue that this roster is probably one of the worst that Ryan Day has had. I'm not confident in it. I don't see a reason to be confident in it. There's too many question marks. Their offensive line and their quarterback.
All right, getting back to Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay. I do agree. Here's the thing for me. Let's get off of, let's just say an argument's sake that they are who you say that they are, because I do think that they can do it. It wouldn't surprise me if Michigan won the Big Ten again. Not even remotely close. Would surprise me if they won the Big Ten. What are you going to do in a playoff? Because here's the truth. You're talking about now to kind of combine it together about what you were saying with Ohio State. The reason we say Ohio State's overrated is because they were getting their asses kicked in the playoff, right? Like they were going there every year. One year, if you remember when they played Clemson, they blanked Ohio State. I think it was like 33-0 or something. Blanked them. They got to show up in the playoff. They gonna at some point they're gonna have to show that they have a good enough roster that they can be well coached enough. Joe, they got ran out the building defensively by TCU, who quite honestly of all the playoff teams that have ever existed, they may have had the worst offense that's ever made the playoff. I think that that's pretty fair.
TCU?
Joe, think of the offenses that have made the playoff.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Name
think
one.
that
That
TCU offense was better than the Notre Dame one that made it. Both Notre Dame ones that made it. That TCU offense.
I disagree. I disagree with that.
They had a first round wide receiver and multiple draft picks
And
that
got
came off
his
of that roster.
ass absolutely locked up when he played a team in a corner worth a damn.
I don't agree with that, and I don't want us to get off track.
Do you know who Akon is?
Yeah, I know who Akon is.
Do you know what his famous song is? I got locked up, won't let me out. That's what Johnson was when he played Georgia. He got locked up, they didn't let him out.
I don't want to get distracted from the point that we're discussing here. Look, what you're asking is can they win a playoff game? And it all comes down to who they play, which we're not going to be able to sit here and predict, and it would be silly to sit here and trying to predict.
It doesn't matter who they play, though. It doesn't matter who they play. Can they? Can they show that they can win a playoff game? I don't care if they win it. If you play for a natty, even though I don't agree with the TCU thing that I'm about to say, if you play for one, you're a pretty damn good and pretty well coached football team.
The reason why, though, I think I have some optimism for the playoff for this upcoming year is what I led with is that senior production that comes back. Them making this heavy push with their collective to incentivize their upperclassmen to return. There is a long-standing history for not long-standing, but there is a history of proven rosters, of experienced rosters being the ones that can succeed in the playoff. It didn't work out the last couple of years. It did not work out the last couple of years for them. But a lot of those guys that have been through those punishing games, those disappointing losses, are coming back. So if you want a group of guys to figure it out and nut up and battle through the frustration, it's going to be the team that's been there twice and that has failed to succeed.
Okay. I do like where they're at on their lines of scrimmage, though. I really do like where Michigan is. Here's the crazy thing. I do think what I'm going to say this is going to sound so awful. I do think that they're the closest thing right now to an SEC team in the country.
I don't think it's a crazy thing to say at all.
Like they are just built. They are built like an SEC football team.
Yeah,
tough,
up front,
gritty, really dominating at both lines of scrimmage. They got really good linebacker play, really good running backs, really good. I mean, the only question I would say before we get out of here or transition, what can they do at receiver? What do you think? How do you think that they are at receiver, meaning Michigan?
I mean, like Ronnie Bell was their best guy and he's gone. I don't know. I feel like that's where the biggest question mark is. But at the same time, do they really need to have like big name playmakers?
Because
they run the ball so well.
Yes,
and they were
Joe,
fine throwing the ball last year.
When I told you, this is a principle that I will stand by into the dawn of time. Okay, and until the day that I take my last breath. When it comes to football, there's going to be a day that their defense is not on, and you're going to have to go out there and score. TCU.